Welcome, everyone, to episode 12 of the Adams Mystery Playhouse Podcast. Adams Mystery Playhouse is the only uh, full time interactive mystery dinner theater in Colorado. I'm your co host, Nick Guida, and with me today is my partner in crime, Marn Wills Cuellar. Marn, how are you today?
Oh, that's just the ghost that lives in the 6 feet under room. Welcome. Hi. I'm doing great. Hi, Mr. Ghost. We're fine. We're doing fine. It's
Marn, who is our guest today? Do we even have one?
Oh, we do. He's one of our newer players and one of my favorite guys, and his name is Quentin Tates. How are you doing today, Quentin?
I thought all along, but I must have accidentally transposed some letters. I thought it was Quentin Toast. I think if you're going to make it in this business, you should consider changing your last name.
Yeah.
I think you'd get a lot of work as Quentin Toast.
Quentin. So how long have you been with us? I don't even remember now. Is it 2 years? 3 years? What is it?
2 years sounds right. At least one summer.
Once, oh gosh, we had a lot of fun last summer. Let's see, how did you find us? I can't remember.
I think I literally just walked in the door and asked if you guys were hiring for actors,
Is that
and
what it
then
was?
I got, and then I got an email to send, and I just sent in my headshot resume, and then you scheduled an audition, and then after that, yeah,
Let's see, you've been in Steam Trunk Murder, which our daughter Allison wrote, and boy, we had a lot of fun with that show, don't you think?
that one is very entertaining to do. Yes, it's one of the ones where the guests dress up, and when they do, they really dress up, and it's just fun to see an entire room like that.
In steampunk, right? Steampunk
Mm-hmm.
garb. Uh-huh. And what
Yeah,
character did
like
you play in that? I'm trying to remember.
what was the name?
You weren't Peter, were you? No, you were.
Yeah, it was Peter.
Yeah, you were Peter. Peter Southworth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, cricket player, if I remember correctly.
Yes, this one. Yes,
Uh, Go ahead, do a little
it was.
Peter.
It was.
Uh,
It was more. It was more Australian a little bit. I think it was a
oh,
little something more like this.
well, with
It's
steampunk,
early
you
in the morning.
mm. With steampunk you can time travel, and it doesn't. You can be anywhere and anybody. You've also been in zombie murder,
Yes, quite frequently.
hmm and you've
I think that
played
was actually my first show.
really, and you've played several
Yeah.
different characters in that, haven't you?
I've done the professor a little bit.
Doctor Weird,
I did, yeah, Doctor Weird. I did the journalist a couple times.
and we called you. It was Mavis, but we turned you into Marvin or something, or what we something like
Marvin.
that. Marvin.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Let's see, what other
Push
shows
the
have you
button.
done? You've been a lot in the 6 feet under room, and you were asking me some of the history of that. Why are you intrigued about the 6 feet under room? What does that do for you?
I just think it's like fun to see how he turned the funeral home into a working theater, and they could. You really wouldn't know unless you were told.
Yeah, the 6 feet under room, folks, is a room that we didn't use for many years, and it's downstairs. And then we thought, well, we got so darn busy, we were like, we need another space. And so we got in there and fixed it up. It Now those church pews in there, Quentin, along the walls.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
we bought the building, there were 14-foot oak pews, and you know how heavy those are to move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really don't move them.
We don't move them, but sometimes I'm like begging you, Quentin, please move that a little so I can plug that cord in. And they're heavy, huh?
Yeah, no, I try not to do it because it's work.
Have you ever felt any weird presences down there, Quentin?
I was not thinking of down there, um, but upstairs, the very top of the rooms,
Oh yeah.
there's a few of the shirts and jackets up there that I sometimes use for the shows. And one time after the show, when I was returning a shirt, I think I walk up there, everything's fine. I return the shirt. I'm walking back, And you know those lights that are hanging on like the fence thing that like respond to like sound and movement?
Mm-hmm.
They just turned on.
Oh,
Like as I was walking back. Like I walked by fine first time, nothing, walked back the second time, lights and sounds. I kind of freaked out, ran down to the bottom of the stairs, focused myself, went back to look. It was unplugged.
well, there's been a lot of, especially some of our cleaning ladies that refuse to go up there. Did I ever tell you why the red room is painted all red? When we had the outside of the building painted by this marvelous guy, David Martinez, and his son, and David is an incredible artist, and we came up with the color scheme and it was fun. And then he comes into me one day and he said, I had a dream that I need to paint that entire room, everything in it, furniture, walls, the whole shot, all red. Will you allow me to do that? And I'm like, yeah, do it. And it's creepy. Yeah. And I actually don't talk to the ghosts over there. I think a lot of them have moved away, to be honest with you. But in the
Well,
beginning,
the prices around this neighborhood have skyrocketed. Of course, they moved. They
exactly.
they they had to. They had no choice. They couldn't afford to live around here anymore.
Talk about transparency. I mean, transparency and real estate fees. One of my favorite parts of Steam Trunk was when we made the decision to make Elizabeth one of the audience members because the 6 feet under room is smaller
Yes.
and we had too many actors. And how
Yes,
fun
that would
was
have been
that when you're up on the stage going, "Oh, Elizabeth," and then this gal in the audience,
poor
"Oh, Peter."
Elizabeth.
Let's
Poor Elizabeth, because after that, everybody would just kind of pile on to her about it if there was like, hey, stupid Peter.
Yeah, stupid, but I would love it. You go, "Oh, Elizabeth," and she'd go, "Oh, Peter." "Oh, Elizabeth." "Oh, Peter." "Oh, Elizabeth." And then David Hardison would go, "Oh, brother." I loved you
I
last
try.
summer in the Mystery in the Campground as, let's see, you played Bobby mostly, right?
Yeah.
The nerdy guy
Yeah.
who's kind of
It
afraid of
was.
the outdoors.
Yep. I get to talk about video games a lot.
Hmm. And then when the owl hoots, you jump into
being
Rio's
scared,
arms.
being scared every time was fun.
Yeah, the kids love it when they see us jumping scared.
It's one of my favorite running gags is the lightning every time the whimsical wizard's wand.
Oh, yeah. And the lightning and
Yeah.
thunder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a
That's one of
shocker.
my
Hmm.
It's one of my favorite running gags because we play with oh, don't say the word, don't finish it, or oh, you said it.
Hmm. Whimsical wizard's wand.
Ah.
Well, we're going to do something a bit different on this episode. I did a separate interview with a special guest today, and I'd like to bring him on. His name is Carlos Cuellar. He is the other owner, the unspoken owner, uh, here at Adams Mystery Playhouse. So glad you could join us today. How are you doing today, Carlos?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. I know that's been kind of the history of these people asking how everybody's doing. So I'm hoping everybody is fine, but I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Well, that is splendid to hear. Well, let's get started here. Why? I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about the building. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this building that is now Adams Mystery Playhouse?
From the records that we've been able to gather from, we're pretty sure that the earliest census recording of the building is in 1907. We actually think that the building was there before that, but according to Denver's census records, and that's the earliest recording of the building. So we just kind of say ballpark about that time. And it was basically originally built as a home by William Simpson, who was a Canadian. We heard some kind of bad rumors about him. Not the best fellow, not the best bloke around town. So we think that actually he returned to Canada because by the time the 1910 census comes around, he's no longer listed as a resident anywhere in the area. So we believe, fortunately, he was vanished back to his home Canada. And then about 1938, Pat Day was born there, and Pat Day is a wonderful woman that we've had the pleasure of becoming kind of friends with, and we think about her quite often. She's given us a lot of history of the building. Some of the photos and the poster boards around there were actually provided by Pat J, a lot of the info. So it became a mortuary in 1934, and then she was born in 38. So she basically was born and grew up and got married and spent a lot of her time running around the mortuary, which sounds like it could be a little weird, but she said they never had any bad things happen. They never felt any weirdness in the building. It was just a very comfortable home for her.
Well, speaking of that, I believe you have a story about Ted Day.
When Pat Day's dad, Ted Day, was 17, he left for World War I, and his mother had passed away shortly before that, unfortunately. So he told himself that if he was fortunate enough to make it through the war, which obviously, if you can kind of follow the storyline along, luckily he did make it through. He told his mother that he would try to do something that would bring compassion and healing to people. Hence the fact that he became a mortician. And I just knowing Pat Day, I'm presuming that he was probably a very loving, gentle man, and I can see him excelling at being running the mortuary. And actually, in a way, we feel like we're just continuing that theory because we feel like we bring a lot of joy and laughter and bonding to the building. So we feel like we're just an extension of the great history of the building. And then in 1965, a gentleman by the name of Noonan, which is another famous name in mortuary circles, actually bought into the building, partnered with the Day family, and it became the Day Noonan Mortuary. And this was in 1965. And that was at the same time that the big chapel was added on. They used to do the services back in the older part of the house, kind of over by the casket bar area, but then they became, when they expanded, it allowed them to build that big chapel, and that became where they did the services. And ironically, now that's our big, beautiful dining room where the people watch the show and continue the bonding and the sharing, the laughter together.
Now, we talked earlier in a different part of the episode about the 6 feet under room. Now, when they expanded the building back in 1965, what did that room originally become?
Oh, good question. That actually became the coffin viewing room where the coffins would be displayed down there. And Pat Day told us that the families would go downstairs, choose their coffin, and then go upstairs and have the service up there in the larger room. So that was the coffin viewing room. And it's now called the 6 feet under room. We consider ourselves somewhat theatrical, not as much myself as you wonderful performers, but we thought that was a very good name for it.
And then also the kitchen. Well, it's not really a kitchen. Is it a kitchen? Downstairs, where the caterers. What did that used to be?
Well, good question. The area that's our kitchen now, that was originally the embalming room. So I think everybody can pretty much gather what would go on in that little corner.
And this is something. This is something you talk about a lot. Well, we talk about a lot. That it's fascinating, I suppose. We are doing our mystery comedy shows, and a lot of people that come to the shows had actually been here before for a funeral. I mean, isn't that true? I mean, how many people do you think have told you that?
Oh, quite a few, quite a few. You know, the building has a great history in that part of Denver. So quite a few people have mentioned, uh, as an example, you know, we've been there about 16 years, ballpark, and I'll have people walk up to me and say, you know, I was in the building 20, 22, 25 years ago, and there's kind of a pause. And then I go, Obviously you were here for a funeral, for a service." And they go, "Yes." And um, my, my, my retort sometimes back to them is, well, I only can hope that this is a more fun occasion now. And they usually laugh at that.
And then here's another trait that Carlos has. He pretty much runs the box office, and he's on the phone a lot talking to the guests. But he remembers pretty much everyone who comes to the shows or who's ever come to a show. You remember their names. How do you do that?
I think part of it is it's just kind of always been a little bit of what I am and how my brain works or doesn't work, but I'm pretty good with names. I've been in sales a good part of my life. my family actually started a Mexican food restaurant chain in Texas, originally where I'm from Dallas. So I've kind of taken the position of host and greeter, and so I feel like part of my focus in this whole thing is to make people feel comfortable. So there's been many occasions where people will say, because we get so much repeat business, and that's one of the things that we're very proud of. I know, it's one thing to have people come once or twice, but there's a couple of names of people that come to mind. I was going to mention some of our good repeat customers, like Brian and Betty Seaman, and their wonderful brothers and sisters and in-laws. Every time they have guests, they come to the show. We know, and they've helped us keep count. They're the record holders. The last time they came to the building was their 30th visit, which, I know that it's a very good performance, and I feel like we treat people well and make them feel, welcome and comfortable and happy. But to have someone come 30 times, I believe speaks for the quality of the show, which, we're just blessed to have so many wonderful performers. Oh, and there's, Gil Garcia, and he brings his family, and Charlie Chase keeps coming over and over. Kelly Ewalt is a wonderful young person. Well, I say young, everybody is younger than I am, but she has her birthday party there every year. So, we just know that we're just thrilled that so many people want to come time and again. But again, that's kind of what I've become, is kind of the host and greeter. It's a little bit of my background, and I was kind of the class clown growing up, so I wasn't professionally trained to do any kind of comedy or performing. But after being around Martin Wills Cuellar all these years, I've kind of picked up on some of the aspects of comedy. And so I try to stay behind the scenes, and I try not to interject too much. That's one of my downfalls, and let the real pros take over. And ironically, I'm either on stage for the announcements and the closing remarks, or I'm at the back of the room, which gives you two really good viewpoints. And it's just so fun to see people becoming almost like one, and kind of having that bonding experience.
Those aren't the only places you are, though, Carlos. And if you take your eyes off of him for just a split second, he's gone.
I have been known to leave the room.
He'll come up and ask you a question, and sometimes before you have a chance to answer it, gone.
I'm I can be a little slinky sometimes too, which probably fits well.
Yeah, I think you missed your calling as a cat burglar.
Uh,
They would have never caught you.
I know this has come up on many of the podcasts. Many of the performers have mentioned it, but just the highlight is always looking out there and seeing the people just having so much fun. I don't know how many people on comment cards and in person have told us, we cannot believe how fun this is. We're going to bring everybody that we know back here. We can't wait to come back. And it's a very unique place. A lot of people have said there is nothing else like this going on. So we feel very fortunate to provide that little break. I tell people the world can be tough and hard sometimes, but for those 3 hours that the people come, the ride we put them on, 99.9% of the people are as happy as they can be, and just can't wait to come back. And we're very fortunate to have so many wonderful staff. I think when everybody gets there, everybody becomes kind of a performer and kind of a greeter and a helper, and everyone does their part to make the night go splendidly well most nights.
Thanks for joining us today, Carlos.
Well, you're welcome. I'm honored to be part of the telecast and the business.
All right. Well, there you go. It was Carlos had to run. As I said earlier, he has a hard time standing still. But I'm glad we were finally able to get him to join us. Now let's move on to the next portion of our episode. We'll begin with the solution to last episode's mini mystery, which was the professor is disappointed. And now, how did the professor know that Vi Cargo faked the robbery? Well, you see, Fordney pointed to the raindrops glistening on a leaf in the shoe impression. According to Vi Cargo's statement, the burglar had jumped from her window after it had stopped raining. Mm-hmm. And now, let's move on to this episode's mini mystery. Too clever. Marn will be the narrator, Quentin will be Albert Lynch, and I will be Professor Fordney. So here we go with Too Clever.
Receiving no reply to my ring and finding the door unlocked, I went in.
said Albert Lynch.
Dawson was seated at his desk, shot through the head. Seeing he was dead, I called the police and remained here.
Touch anything, Lynch?
Asked Professor Fordney.
No, sir, nothing.
Positive of that, are you?
Absolutely, sir.
The professor made a careful examination of the desk and found Dawson had been writing a letter at the bottom of which was covered by the dead man's hand and penned a message. A.L. did this, and weakly trailed off. Further examination disclosed several kinds of writing paper, a pen tray holding the recently used pen, inkwell, eraser, stamps, letters, and bills. The gun from which the shot had been fired was on the floor by the side of the chair, and the bullet was found embedded in the divan.
What do you make of it, Professor?
Though the scrawled note certainly looks like Dawson's writing, I'm sure an expert will find it isn't. I'm not surprised to find the gun was free of prints. Pretty thorough job, this. Good thing for you, Lynch, that the murderer was careless about something. Well, there you go. How did Professor Fordney know that Lynch was not the murderer? And that should wrap it up for another episode here at Adams Mystery Playhouse. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Get back in there. Ghosts are supposed to be in the closet.
And please join us again for the next episode from Adams Mystery Playhouse.